Foundation, Kasumisou Foundation. Kasumisou Foundation. Since its founding in 1998, the foundation has conceived and operated or sponsored more than 20 programs or projects aimed at improving the lives of some of Southeast Asia's most disadvantaged people. During that time, we have done projects or programs in Indonesia, Thailand, Burma, Cambodia, and Laos. We're currently confining our efforts to Cambodia, where we focus on 4 main programs. For nearly 20 years, Barbara and her husband Mark have continued as unpaid volunteers without interruption to offer programs and services to assist the poor, disadvantaged families, and children who are often dually impacted by extreme poverty and their HIV status. Barbara joined Waddell & Reed in San Mateo in 2010 and became a financial advisor in January 2011. It is her nature to want to help people, so it is no surprise that her passion in both arenas of her life, professional and nonprofit, is to help families and individuals set priorities and help them to find ways to pursue their goals. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you. I'm very unaccustomed to having a camera, so that kind of freaks me out a little bit, but I'll get over it. So, first of all, I'd like to apologize. My hard drive, I'm in mourning and sort of recovery. My hard drive died last week. I had all of my life on there, and although I have backup is not always immediately available, I have found out. The words of the wise. So I have struggled with putting this back together in a real busy time frame, so I hope you're going to forgive me if it's a little disjointed. And I always talk too fast.
Sorry.
And
I'm directing
and
these
I'm not
folks.
sure what I'm
Go
doing.
ahead, just talk.
So I always talk too fast, and if I say something you don't understand, you can feel free to interrupt me. I'm also technologically illiterate, so this is where I turn the button on. Is that correct, Mike?
The side one.
Okay. And is it going to be over there where I see it, or is it going to be back here where I don't see it?
It's gonna be back here where you
Oh,
don't
okay,
see.
there we
So
go.
it's- otherwise it's right here.
Okay, well, that'll make it interesting.
Right here, right here.
That'll make it more interesting. Okay. So first of all, my very limited personal history. My parents divorced when I was 11. I went to work cleaning houses for $5 a day when I was 12. By the time I was 15 years old, I worked 3 evenings and Saturdays at Macy's and babysat 5 nights a week, all night, for a family who worked for the post office. They had 4 kids. I got them ready for school in the morning, and then I went to high school. I left home involuntarily at age 17. My mom was challenged, and I was self-supporting from May 1st of 1970. Now you know how old I am. I worked and went to school. I tried to graduate from high school, could not, because although I had all the credits, I did not have 4 years of attendance, and it wasn't until 10 years ago that I found out I actually did graduate from high school. But be that as it may, I worked hard, worked 2 jobs, went to school, went to college, you can do it, went to college, did not graduate. Are you seeing a pattern here? Did not graduate, but made the dean's list, have about 2 years of college, went to work in financial services, worked my way up, became an officer of the institution I worked for when I was 24, moved to California when I was 24, went to work for B of A, went to Wall Street, and then became a vice president in fixed income trading for a top Wall Street firm. So that's my challenge background. The reason I bring it up is that if you have people, through the grace of God, are kind enough to recognize that you might have a spark of potential and just help you for no other reason out of the goodness of your heart, you totally have a chance to beat the odds. And so, with that, I'm going to go into Kasumisou Foundation. So Kasumisou Foundation was established in 1999 and is a California 501c3 nonprofit. We have 4 main programs right now, and as Sylvia said, we did do other things. We built 3 schools in Laos. We did children's book publishing in Cambodia because they burned all the books during the Khmer Rouge years. We supported arts. We had a hunger project in Timor until it blew up. Timor blew up, not hunger project. And we had done some educational work in China with a friend of my husband's. But now we host 2001 9/11, which changed the financial world of everybody that I know. We narrowed our limited resources, which were suddenly far more limited, to Cambodia, which was where we thought we could do the most good. We have 4 programs: an AIDS patient family support program. This is where I'm supposed to do this, right?
Just point it over here.
Okay.
You can look
AIDS AIDS patient family support program that supports indigent women and their children who are impacted by HIV and extreme poverty. We have Champay Academy of Arts, which was originally another program called Apsara, which introduced disadvantaged Cambodian children to their rich cultural heritage and kind of functioned then and functions now as a Boys and Girls Club. We have a rural assistance program where we work in northeastern Cambodia with impoverished and often illiterate peasant farmers. And then we have Kasumisou Scholars, which supports education at all levels in our programs. And its goal was to react to the need to create a pathway to college because we had kids that suddenly were going to make it. So those were our programs. But the evolution in terms of how we started was we moved to Japan in 1990. My husband went as treasurer for Citibank. I was a trailing spouse with a 3-year-old. And like most expats, we intended to take the most advantage we could of our expat life. So every holiday became an opportunity for exotic to travel to exotic places. And we did them all. Bali, Hong Kong, Thailand, Vietnam, China, the works. And eventually Cambodia. In 1996, we moved to Singapore, and my husband was a road warrior that year. He made 39 trips, was away from home 272 days, and that did not include home leave or holidays. So my friends and I would make jokes about it being divorced, but without child support worries, you know? And one day, my 10-year-old son was downstairs, and he heard something upstairs. He said, "Mommy, who's upstairs? Who's that man upstairs?" I said, "Oh, honey, that's not a man, that's your daddy." So that kind of tells you about our life. But still, our life, this life gave us a lot of unique opportunities. And some of them were great, and some of them make me cringe today. And I still remember the first, but not the last time, that I stepped over a person pretending not to see him. It was in Bangkok, Thailand in 1992. It was stinking hot. We were lost. My husband would not ask for directions. What is it with you guys? Okay. My son was whining. The storm clouds were brewing. And we had to do this pedestrian overpass. And there was a guy who appeared to be crippled. I did a little too closely. And he was right in the middle of the walkway, and there was no way around it. I thought, oh gosh, I just read a book called The Fine Balance, which talked about organized begging and the beggar master of this or that, and I'm thinking, okay, if I give him money, does he get it? If I give him money, does he give it to somebody? If I give him money, what does he do with it? Is this a scam? Is this not a scam? I don't know. So you know what I did? I pretended not to see him, not my finest moment. I pretended not to see him, and I stepped over him. That was something that still makes me cringe today, but you know, the things that you do that you shouldn't should be a catalyst to move you forward. And so life did change after that. And as the view from our 5-star fortresses was forever changed because of that, without wanting to, I began to see the real world. The poverty, the pot-bellied kids playing in the puddles in the street, knowing that the nice thing that could happen to them was that they wouldn't be hit by a car. That's the nice thing that might happen to them. All of the other things that could happen to them, well, too uncomfortable to even consider. But gradually what happened is we came to understand that the grinding poverty that we were seeing was actually inherited poverty, not poverty by choice, not poverty by lack of opportunity, but poverty because of lack of understanding, lack of mentoring, and lack of access to available resources that could enable people to actually help themselves. In 1997, my husband left banking and we started a business, Kasumisou Gallery. And the idea was to preserve traditional crafts and skills while providing sustainable employment to harder to employ people, particularly people who were handicapped, impacted by ethnic origin or HIV status. And so we thought, bright idea, we would use the profits, I laugh on that one, of the business for social impact in the countries where we sourced our goods. And in fact, what happened is it was the tail wagging the dog. If there was ever a phrase that suits this, it's called mission creep. Sure, we were out there looking for goods, but now our eyes were opened, and everywhere we went, we saw other things and other things and other things. And I confess, I am motivated by greed and need and guilt and all the other things that motivate people. And so I wanted a prosperous life, but then I saw these people, and I'm thinking, gee, what should we be doing? What could we be doing? Why aren't we doing it? And so this coming to terms with the compelling need that we encountered became a very challenging aspect of our new life. So when we visited Cambodia, the first time was in 1997. The UN peacekeepers had left. It was a mess. Nothing was really working properly. And they had some beautiful textiles, beautiful history of lacquer, beautiful history of art in general. And so we thought, okay, this could be a place. And we started to work with a group that worked with landmine victims making products. And then on one of my husband's trips, he was in his car. He has a driver, the same driver still today, and there was a lady who was lying on the street. And he said to support the driver, he said, "What's the story with her?" He said, "I don't know." So they stopped the car, and this happened to be right outside of a hospital that's sponsored by a religious organization. And they said, asked the street vendors what's going on with her. They said, well, she's been there about 3 days. She's conscious, she's not conscious. She hitched a ride in from the countryside because she's sick. And the reason she was at that hospital is because every day you would queue up, and if you queued up, you could get a piece of paper that would allow you to go in and get medical care. Well, it's pretty hard to queue up if you can't stand up. So they found a bed for her in the municipal hospital, which means it's a wooden pallet. There's no sheets, there's no towels, there's no blanket, there's no mattress. And so off supporters went to the central market to buy a straw pallet, a pillow, and a this and a that. The lady had AIDS, she had TB, she had some other opportunistic infection, but it wasn't the AIDS that was killing her, it was all of the other stuff that made her so sick. So she was in that hospital, and there she was. And that was the beginning of our AIDS patient family support program. Because what happens is when you see a new word, have you ever noticed that you see that word everywhere? Everywhere. And so she was not one, she was one of a legion of people like this. And so what we found was that we worked with different people. These ladies all had a common story. Typically they were abandoned either by death or design of their often very ne'er-do-well husbands. They had HIV, usually full-blown AIDS. In those days, there were no antiretroviral medications. And so over time, we accumulated a core of about 75 changeable families, mainly single mothers, many with children. At one point, we had about 120 kids in the program. Some were HIV positive, some were not. We lost about 40% of our moms every year. They left their kids, which meant those kids had to be placed someplace. And Cambodia was a real basket case, and there was no place to put them. So we would find relatives who couldn't afford to keep them, so we would provide support to the relatives so that they could keep the kids and feed them and get them in school. And then at one point, through one of our other programs, our what's now called Champay, but which was called Apsara Arts Program, we actually built a dormitory, and we had about 20 kids that we were fostering long-term over a number of years. So again, never our intention, but the problem is how do you look away and how do you turn away? And then you say, oh, adopt those kids out, that's easy. Well, you need to understand in the developing world, particularly at that time, adoption is a business. It's a big business. And children were sold. Very frequently, they were sold. Sometimes they were sold for adoption, sometimes they were sold for other things. So we didn't want to let loose of those kids unless we knew that they had a place to go that was safe and where we could monitor what was going on. We placed an emphasis on education, and we offered kids motivations. In our AIDS patient family support program, you can say, well, how did you monitor 75 families? We had a home visit team, and that home visit team was headed by, of course, a Peruvian ex-nun. Juana had come to Cambodia before as a Marinol nun, and then she was being transferred back somewhere that she didn't want to go and do administrative work, and so she left her job as a nun. Didn't know you could do this, but you can. She left her job as a nun, and she still continued to work with AIDS patients in Cambodia because she felt that was her mission. And we found Juana, and that was a marriage made in heaven. Juana, she created a home visit team for us comprised of less ill patients, and they visited each and every family at least once a week. They made sure there were no deadbeat guys hanging around taking the money. We provided these families slum housing because they were living on the streets when we found them, and slum housing was what we could afford. We made sure that there was enough to eat. It wasn't great, but there was enough to eat, and we made that there were utilities in the house. And typically, even today, we still have a family roster of about 20 patient families that we take care of. Costs, including the cost of my husband's travel, and we figure about $170 a month is what we allot for our share of support for those families. emphasis with those kids and those families was on education. Get an education, because education was the key to breaking the cycle of inherited poverty. We would offer them a chance at a free used bike. I mean, come on guys, what's better than that? In a country like Cambodia, that was a big deal, a free used bike. If they were in elementary school, you had to just make the top 3 of your class. We provided the tea money that kids had to take to school in order to get taught by the teachers. Teachers were still being paid $10, $20 a month. And consequently, if you didn't provide tea money, like $2 or $3 a month, to the teacher wouldn't teach your kid. Well, kids from indigent families don't have tea money. So we made sure that they had tea money so that they would get taught and be able to, continue their education. Gradually, when ARVs, antiretroviral medications, moved into the medical world and into Cambodia, our AIDS patient family support program became the ticket for these families, these women, to have access to get those drugs, because the condition of taking the medicine was you had to have a stable living environment, because they had to be taken precisely and monitored. And so for 15 years, Juana, our little ex-nun, ran our program. As Cambodia prospered, our goal was never to have people on our ticket forever. We said, you got an education, get a job, help your mom, help your family, do this, do that. And so over the years, we tried to wean people off of our support for them as much as possible. So this core of roughly 20 fragile families that we maintain today exists because these people all have unique situations, and it's almost impossible to turn away from them, because the first thing that would happen is next month they would be homeless. So we continue that. Now I'm behind on my pictures, and I'm racing because I'm behind on my time. So part of what happened as we said to these kids, go to school, get an education, go to school, get an education. Guess what? They did. And in a country where only 40% of all students go to high school, not graduate, go to high school, and only a few percent graduate, we suddenly had kids graduating from high school and wanting to go to college. And so we started Kasumisou Scholars Program. The tuition for college in Cambodia is not expensive, sort of $400 to $1,200 a year for the tuition. But take that times 10 or 15 and it really starts to add up. We continued with that and have had several kids who have now graduated from college. We have pared that down because we do not have core funding to maintain it. So it's something that will not continue once the rest of the kids who are in that program kind of go through it. But we're very proud of these kids because they have gone through incredible odds to go through this, get these jobs, get the credential to go to college and then continue through college. So these were our Fab Four. These were the first 4 that we had, and that was supposed to be deleted when I edited this program this morning. That didn't happen, sorry. It was a mistake. This young lady on the left, she has just graduated. She rode her bicycle to classes. She is handicapped. She rode her bicycle every day to classes, miles and miles, and she has now gotten a grant from USAID to do a study. And her dream is to go to graduate school in Japan. This young man, that's a terrible picture, but he's a kid that finally graduated from high school. He's 22 years old, and he is now in college, and he's also working for us in our Champay Academy. Which brings me to our next program. So, Champay Academy was originally Upsar Arts Association and was created in 2000 as a safe space for youth to learn about pride of culture, develop discipline, good work ethics, etc. We offer today still free instruction 6 days a week, morning and afternoon session. We have a core of between 60 and 100 students depending upon the time of year. Through this we have what we created a Jobs for Youth program, which we actually employ a lot of our students as either apprentices to do the office work, whatever. And some of those are our college kids because they don't have a nickel from their family because of their status. And so we have boys that sleep on our dance stage and they do maintenance work for us and all of this stuff so that they can earn the pocket money, no handouts. They can earn pocket money to, have some personal expenses paid and pay for food and things like that. Every year we have what we call our summer arts program, which is actually late summer arts program, where we get about 100 campers. They're kids from the local area where they're out of school break for 2 months. It's a safe space for them to go and learn about their heritage. And increasingly now, we have some pretty good art students where we're paying them a small stipend, or dance students a small stipend, so that their families won't force them to quit work and go to work at a market stall. So these are just some shots inside of our little area. The kids actually painted, our art students painted this backdrop. And our big success is that now, this is when we had a little flood, so they couldn't dance. Now we have reached an agreement with Raffles Hotel La Royale in Phnom Penh, where our dancers perform weekly in the evenings, once a week in the evenings for the hotel. And you can see that they're just great. Picture of our music. We teach art, dance, and music. Picture of some of our musicians learning. This is a picture of our art room. You can't tell it really what, see what it is very well. Our artists. Some of their work. Now I'm supposed to stop really quickly, but I'm going to go into the reason I'm really here. We have a well drilling program in northeastern Cambodia called Praving Province, and these are typical housing of what our folks live in. We're looking for sponsorship for 20 and up to 50 wells. We have some relationships with other organizations. A well is $280. We have a moringa farming program. We've negotiated a 5-year deal with a moringa processor, which means we have a stable cross. Moringa is an organic supplement or a herbal supplement. Provides a year-round cash crop for our farmers. But the thing is that if you don't have a well, you cannot do this. I did not time my presentation early this morning when I was making it, so I'm clearly out of time. I have a lot to say. I would love to talk to you more about it. You can visit our website. It's on there, www.kasumisou.org. You can see our projects on global giving as well as our project update. If you are moved professionally as a group to make a donation or sponsorship, we'd love to see it. If you move personally to make a donation, we'd love to see it. I always tell people there is no amount too big or too small that does not catch our attention, and we're very grateful, and I truly appreciate this opportunity to speak to you this morning, and I'm sorry I spoke so fast and didn't get to this part until the very last bit. Thank you very much.
Barbara, will you be around a little bit after the meeting? We do have a COG meeting that will start at 8:40, so you will have some time with Barbara to ask her any additional questions. But are there any questions on the floor right now for Barbara?
You said there was an AIDS epidemic there? I mean,
So in Cambodia, AIDS is global, and what was going on in the 90s, the same way in San Francisco, AIDS was rampant.
Right, yeah.
AIDS was quite common in the developing world all around, but nobody knew what it was, and in countries that were dysfunctional like Cambodia, there was no precaution about it. So what happened, it was not unusual for gentlemen to step outside their marital relationship and frequent other ladies and then bring AIDS back in. Even our rural assistance program, when we went up there's no water, and the people would, when the rains failed, they would migrate to the cities to earn money. And they would send money home, and then they would also bring back HIV to the countryside because they would, be away from their homes for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so AIDS was a death sentence in the 1990s until ARVs, antiretroviral medications, came into being. Other questions?
Great. Barbara, we're going to ask you to pick the one more round. Is there anybody want to buy an extra ticket today for $1? Okay.